Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. I'm Joshua Orchard, and it's time for a little update on the P-47 project. Now, since we've been away, I've been able to get a lot of work done on this, particularly in some of the detail things that I really enjoy. And we'll start off today with the tail retracts. Now, the P-47 comes from Horizon Hobby with two different covers for the tail section, one for fixed gear, one for retracts, where the retracts portion is a piece of molded plastic over some ply formers, and you cut away the plastic part where the retract goes into. But I wanted to have functional retract doors, so I laid up some fiberglass and made my own doors. The doors are simply hinged, and I'm using a push rod with ballpoint pen springs on it with a stop collet to keep tension, and a simple string that connects the two doors together that is pushed against when the landing gear retracts into the fuselage. Next up, we have something that I've pulled off before. This is the cowl flaps. So the P-47 has functional cowl flaps, and the way that I went about this was fairly simple, same way that I've done before, where you have a ring of nylon push rod, Sullivan goldenrod, and you use little segments of the push rod sleeve on each of the flaps. Now, I used the CA type hinges. They're fairly stiff, just to hinge the flaps, but I did cut them out individually after numbering them and making sure that they all stayed in the same place. I used my razor saw to do all of this. I didn't want to use a Dremel to like overshoot something or damage something. But yeah, I used two hinges at the bottom of the cowl, and it expands that ring of push rod and it makes the cowl flaps move. And as soon as I did this, I realized that there was a glaring error, which takes me to the next area of the airplane that I ended up working on, which was the hatch. The P-47 has a pretty distinguished shape in the nose, and the nose of the P-47, as it comes, it's a little too tall. The hatch comes really, really close to the stock open all the way cowl flaps, and there's no movement at all for the cowl flaps to even close. I'm not sure why they did this. It's a pretty simple fix, but all I did was take the front, essentially front third of the entire hatch, and stripped away the balsa sheeting, and I very carefully took apart all of the different formers, made new formers, made new stringers, and resheeted and reglassed with the right shape. So that is done now, and while I was there, I moved on to start to modify the rear of the hatch as well. Part of the reason that we have the Razorback is because they hadn't developed the bubble canopies yet, the smoothed, curved glass that is bulletproof. That came a short while later. This is a P-47D after all, but the P-47D also had the Razorback as well as the bubble canopy version. That's a misconception by a lot of modelers. But with the Razorback, you also have the ability for the pilot to physically see rear. Got to see behind you. You're a fighter pilot. You need to be able to see in all directions. And they did have, the mirror at the top of the canopy that they could look at, but again, you have to be able to turn your head and physically see where you're going or where your enemy is. So I cut these recesses into the canopy, or the hatch rather, and the canopy covers this area quite well, and it's much more scale, gives a little bit more depth, and the more that I'm seeing the foil applied to this airplane, the more I realize that these kinds of depth and texture kinds of things I'm going to need those. Otherwise, the model's just going to look like one solid mass. It's not going to be too interesting to look at. Moving on from there, I was able to tackle some of the last few remaining details to the dummy radial. This includes the spark plug ignition wires. It includes a couple of like hydraulic details that are on the nose dome that I had custom designed and printed. Just because the P-47 had variable pitch, and these hydraulic systems were sort of on the front of the engine rather than the rear in this particular case. So I felt it was important to dress this area up as, a bit more as well. I also created the chin scoop for the cowl. And that took a little bit while to design and get right, but not too terribly tricky. Had to really think through the process of the way I wanted to design it in Fusion, but that's done. And I think the last thing is probably the thing that most people who own this airplane will appreciate the most out of this entire build. I designed these little printable channels. So when you plug the wings in, you've got servos for the ailerons, as well as the flaps. Now, if you have retracts, you're also going to have a servo wire for the retracts. If you end up putting lights, like I'm going to do in the wings, you're also going to have a plug for the lights. So the problem with plugging the wing into the fuselage is that where the wires go in is underneath the servo tray or the tray, wherever your wherever Horizon has designed for you to place your receiver. So you end up like having to use tweezers every single time to pull these wires up to the top, because you really can't physically reach inside there to get them out every time you plug in the wings. And it's a big enough model that it's not really realistic to keep the model assembled all the time. So what I've done is I've designed essentially a tube, but it's a flattened tube that is it's designed to fit directly around the area where the servos are supposed to go through. All you'll have to do is mirror it to get opposing sides. It's not terribly difficult in your slicing software. But these, you just rough them up with sandpaper and medium CA and stick them on that slot, and you're good to go. They just immediately direct the wires straight up, and they're just tall enough to clear that area so that you can grab the wires by hand. No tweezers involved. It's a whole lot easier, And this is a gripe that I've noticed a couple of people have, and I really do think that it'll be really worth the effort to try to get it printed by a friend if you don't have a printer. Because it will save you a significant amount of heartache. So the last thing that I guess I need to be forthcoming and share on video is I'm a father, as most of you, if not all of you know, and I have a teenage daughter, and she likes to do things, and things that we don't necessarily do all the time as a family. Because, you know, we're conservative people. We don't really do anything too daring. I mean, for me, an adrenaline rush is flying an airplane for the first time. So she wanted to go ice skating with a friend, and I broke my ankle. So for the past over a week now, I have been doing nothing but elevating my ankle. I went 2 days before I saw an actual orthopedic doctor. And then he recommended surgery, and I had surgery 2 days after that. I have a nice titanium plate in my leg now, and I am healing now from that. So because I have to pretty much keep my leg elevated all the time, I haven't been able to do much on this project, let alone actual work or helping around the house or anything. It's pretty boring. But I have been able to do a little bit of progress. I've done some detailed parts for the wheels. Haven't really been able to do a whole lot of prototyping on that because my bedroom is 2 stories up from my shop, and it's really kind of a hassle for me to go up and down to run the printer, to look at the test prints and make adjustments and stuff. It's kind of a pain. So I'm kind of at a standstill right now until I heal enough to get going on this project again. But I thought I would at least give you guys this update. This all happened, all the update stuff happened before I broke my ankle. So it is what it is, but I will do the best I can to try to continue to make progress. I do have goals for this project, events that I want to take this to this year, and they are not far away. With that said, though, I'm happy with the progress that I have made. I'm happy that other people are enjoying the project as well. But anyway, until next time, I'm Joshua Orchard, and thank you for stopping by my workshop today. Dang it, now I have to get up. How do I do this? Turn.